Tonight on Property Ladder, it's all about location, as we look at two completely different properties with two very big problems. A houseboat without a home that's risen from the depths.
Do you know what's happened to this barge? It's sunk and something's landed on the top of it. Because, I mean, that is serious aggro, that is.
Yeah.
And a bottom-heavy house in an up-and-coming area that could be sunk by its layout. You should seriously think again as to whether you should put the kitchen upstairs.
Something you've got to remember, when you become a developer, you've got to have vision.
This week it's bricks and mortar versus steel and rivets as a period house in a great area goes up against a houseboat with no location at all. The properties could not be more different, but there's one thing that ties them both together. It's their locations that will make or break these developments. One of the greatest tricks you can play in this game is to buy a development in an area that's about to rapidly rise in value. If you can do this in today's nationwide explosive market, you should be onto a real winner. Accountant Darryl Broughton and IT consultant Peter Hopkins certainly think so. They've bought into the up-and-coming London suburb of North Greenwich, earmarked for the 2012 Olympics, and an area that's about to get billions of pounds worth of investment. Family homes round here have gone up by 18% in the last year alone, more than 10% above the national average. But while the area is great, the property itself will be very hard to get right. It's an awkward three-storey Victorian house with a dingy lower ground floor that will be hugely difficult to make appealing. But they're so confident about making money, Darryl has halved his hours as an accountant, so he's got more time to manage this project.
I wouldn't say I was scared. I'm probably quite excited about doing it, I think.
Yeah. We're actually going into property developing.
25 miles away on the River Medway near Strood in Kent, metalworker Vernon Francis and his wife Sue have pulled off the remarkable feat of buying a property with no location at all. They're gambling their life savings on this huge motorless barge with plans to make a 3-bedroom floating home. But over 90% of houseboats are sold with moorings, and Sue and Vernon haven't got one. This is going to be a major problem.
I've always liked boats. I have to confess I don't know a huge amount about boats.
Right. Did you get anyone who does know about boats to look at it before you bought it?
No, I didn't.
No. Do you have a plan?
Not a written-out plan.
So you took a massive punt on it?
Big risk,
really?
yeah. Huge risk.
And just hoped that it'd be all right. If there's one thing I'm sure of, this will not be all right. Whether you're buying a house or a boat, the golden rule remains the same. Always get a thorough survey. But Vernon and Sue didn't bother. They paid just £12,500 for this barge, and they've remortgaged their own home to raise the £40,000 they think they need for all the work. They hope to sell for £130,000, which is extremely high without a mooring, and make a £77,500 profit, which I think is rooted firmly in Fantasyland. So you're a risk taker?
Yeah. The amount of different things I've done in my life in the other business. I mean, from spraying roadside cabinets, sunbeds, building chassis, building trikes, all sorts of things.
And are they always successful?
Not financially, no. It works very, very hard. Sometimes not thinking everything through to the finer detail.
Let's have a look.
Yes, come on.
With their life savings on the line, I hope he has more luck this time. So what are you going to do up here?
Cut the existing roof off and then fit a complete deck from the front right the way forward, rather like the one in the foreground there.
Right. I mean, the detailing of that upper deck is quite crude, and I think that if you want to get it into a good mooring, it needs to be more refined in its detailing. Rising house prices are prompting a widespread move onto the water, and it's the upmarket moorings that are the real draw. One of these could add up to £100,000 to Sue and Vernon's sale price, but they have to be careful because classy marinas will only let in classy boats. They've got no firm plans, but what they're thinking of doing is building a hulking upper deck that stretches down the entire length of the boat. Inside, they'll build an enormous open-plan kitchen, dining, living area. The problem is there'll be no outside space, and the end result will be more floating shed than elegant houseboat. I think they need to scale back the upper deck by about 50%. There'd still be enough room for a comfortable kitchen diner, but it's a much more conventional nautical design that also frees up room for outside space.
In what you've just said to me, it might be worth me considering shortening it slightly.
For somebody who lives on a boat, it is a lifestyle choice, and whilst you don't need a big garden because no one is going to be playing football on it, you do need an area that they can sit outside.
Definitely worth considering.
And then downsizing the living quarters would certainly ease Vernon's workload. He's hoping to do the whole job on his own in just 3 months, but it looks like it would take him that long just to do the lower deck. Gosh, it really is just an empty hull, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It does look quite rusty. Is this watertight?
It is, yes.
It is?
Yeah.
OK. In fact, with no survey, Vernon can't be sure. There's a dry dock inspection booked in for next week. I only hope they're not in for a nasty surprise. Seaworthiness aside, down here they're wanting to squeeze in the kind of layout you'd expect to see in a family home, with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a utility room. But a houseboat is much more likely to be bought by a couple wanting fewer and larger rooms. 2 spacious double bedrooms, a large bathroom, as well as a cosy lounge, will be a far more comfortable and saleable layout.
You have got a point with the 2 luxurious bedrooms rather than 3, but I was feeling it might be better to go for 3 and hedge my bets.
I think because it's a boat, you'd be better off having 2 really good-sized bedrooms with plenty of wardrobes, and so it's a really lovely place for a couple to live, because most of your market will be people without children, so you probably want to try and appeal to them more, I'd have thought. It would be worth Sue and Vernon taking another look at their plans, and crucially getting those plans down on paper, because with no idea what the houseboat will look like, no decent marina will give them the time of day. Pretty valueless, a houseboat with no engine, with no mooring. What do you do with it? So without the mooring, you're really stuffed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
What I'm not sure Sue and Vernon realise is that good moorings are like gold dust. If I was them, I wouldn't spend a penny more on this development before finding a home for their houseboat. In North Greenwich, Peter Hopkin and Darryl Broughton may have struck gold with their location, but they've ended up with one very tricksy property. This unbalanced 3-storey Victorian terrace has a dark and dingy lower ground floor and a very steep, inaccessible back garden. What's more, Peter and Darryl have hardly got off to a flying start. Planning delays mean they've owned the property for 11 months already. How much does that cost you?
15, 20 grand, I can't remember now.
My
something like
God.
that. And just mortgage, mainly mortgage.
Peter and Darryl bought the house for £280,000. Their £80,000 budget is very low, with hefty mortgage payments making it tighter by the minute. But all the while they've owned the property, its value has been rising, and their £440,000 resale figure certainly looks easily achievable. Even so, their diminished budget means they could struggle to make their estimated £80,000 profit. But for the moment, at least, the boys are looking on the bright side.
But we have stripped the walls.
Hey, that's all right then.
And some architraving.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Well done. That's brilliant.
So we have made a start.
So you're 15, 20 grand down
Yes.
with a few wall strips.
Yep.
Yes.
You've really got to get it right, and you've got to get it right soon.
We've got a very, very good idea of the best plan.
OK.
The best possible plan.
I look forward to seeing what they have in mind, because I'm not sure Peter and Daryl have any idea just what a difficult property they've taken on. Daryl Broughton and Peter Hopkin are banking on their North Greenwich development to make them a tidy £80,000 profit. They've nailed the location, but the property is little more than a shell and will take a lot of brains to put right. That's because when a third of your house is below ground level, making it appealing is a real head-scratcher. It's actually quite a long way below ground level. It is so dark and it is so the light is so restricted. It's actually quite unpleasant down here. The Victorians built thousands of properties like this, but the lower ground areas were usually meant for staff, and making the downstairs work for today's lifestyle is tricky. The top half of this 3-bedroom, 3-storey house, though, is less problematic. Here they plan to convert the loft into a master suite, which will score well with the family market. The floor below has 2 bedrooms. They want to add an ensuite, and I agree this will also add value. But it's downstairs that poses the real conundrum. On the ground floor, there's a large living area and a tiny kitchen. And on the gloomy lower ground floor, there are 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Peter and Daryl want to make this dark area the heart of the home by knocking through to create an open-plan kitchen, dining, living area. Then they want to carve up the lighter floor above into an odd hodgepodge of living room, bedroom and bathroom. I think there might be a better solution. I have actually got a completely new plan for your whole development, which is very, very radical and very different to what you'd thought you were going to do. But the best place to describe it is outside in the garden, so come with me and I'll show you.
Great.
There's always a compromise to be made with this type of property, but I don't believe it should be the main living area. I would simply refurbish the lower ground floor to create a playroom at the front and a decent-sized bedroom and bathroom at the rear. Then I'd shift the centre of this home to the much brighter ground floor, maintaining the large open-plan reception room and making a much bigger kitchen diner by bringing it out into the garden. A wraparound walkway would tie all the areas together in a solution that is both functional and stylish. Peter and Daryl would have to reapply for planning permission, but that shouldn't put them off doing what's right for the development. What do you think?
That's a big change.
Interesting.
It's only the bridge that you'd need to get planning permission for. You could still get on with the loft extension.
Yeah.
And you could still get on with refurbishing the whole house.
Yes, true.
I love the idea. However, it's just too far down the line. We just want to get on and get shot of this place.
We have to listen to Sarah.
I know we listen to Sarah.
Will you sleep on it?
Yes.
And then dismiss it?
And then dismiss it.
Hopefully I can find a way of making the boys change their minds. I think it would be a crying shame to see them throwing away a first-rate location on a second-rate layout. 25 miles away in Strood, it's a nail-biting day for Sue and Vernon Francis. They bought this rust bucket without a survey. And today, Vernon finds out the worst.
Do you know what I think's happened to this barge? It don't really matter structure, but I reckon that it's sunk and something's landed on the top of it. Because, I mean, it does seem like an awful lot of work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A third of the hull will have to be replated. It's a bit like re-roofing part of your house, and this doesn't come cheap. For Paul Rutherford, the boatyard owner, it's an open and shut case.
Do you know what? I mean, you know, don't take it the wrong way or nothing, but I mean, if I was you, I would seriously consider cutting your losses, flogging it, and getting something that ain't got all those because I mean that is serious aggro. That is.
Yeah.
Welding on new plates could cost up to £10,000. Right at the start, this project is teetering on the brink of collapse, and it's not helped by Vernon's finger-in-the-wind budget. The £20,000 they've allocated for labour and materials is woefully small. The kitchen and bathrooms budget is just £3,000. And on furnishing and decoration, he's allowed £5,000. For professional fees and costs, there's £6,000. And a contingency of £6,000 that's already looking like history. The total budget of £40,000 is completely unrealistic. Even for a skilled metalworker like Vernon, replating the hull is a massive task for one man to take on. It's a terrible blow. It will rip his 3-month schedule apart and push them even further into debt.
I'm happy to admit I'm wrong when I'm wrong. And I just don't know if I can do the job.
Two days later, Vernon rallies himself to the task.
No backing down. Let's show these river boys how to do a boat.
It's a courageous move, but it's also a dangerous distraction from a much more urgent problem with the development. The houseboat still has no mooring and little value. Sue and Vernon have been thinking local, but have no idea that finding a location round here will not only be difficult, but will also do little to boost their development's value.
I mean, Chatham Marina, which is here, has no boats that are as long as yours. Yours is quite a long boat at 80 foot.
Yes.
Crewe Marina, here, that doesn't have anything as long as 80 foot. This is Port Werburg Marina, but they have a massive long waiting list and a very slow turnover of boats coming and going.
Even if Sue and Vernon could find a local mooring, it still wouldn't add the kind of value that a city mooring could, as it's the big cities that command the big prices. With the right London mooring, their houseboat could be worth over £500,000. The outlay for one of these coveted moorings would be at least £200,000, but Vernon and Sue could stand to make a 6-figure profit, over £20,000 more than planned.
I have to say I've been a little bit slack or casual about it, and I was really going to pass the buck slightly to Sue, because she's very good at researching, and see what we could come up with.
The trouble is, finding a mooring is a full-time job, but Sue, who runs a temp agency, has already got one of those. In Greenwich, it's week 1 of Peter Hopkin and Darryl Broughton's build. They're about to start knocking through the dark and dingy basement into this property's main living space. But I'm determined to have one last go at changing their minds. I really think you should seriously think again as to whether you should put the kitchen upstairs, because it is very dark down here. From upstairs you can see the garden, it's light, it's bright, and down here would make 2 really good bedrooms. I mean, it doesn't matter if bedrooms are a little bit darker.
Once it's all light, white walls, cream walls, it's going to be a lot brighter. Something you've got to remember, when you become a developer, you've got to have vision.
Really? I really admire their spirit, but developing is a business, and the concept I want them to apply to their development is that of upside-down living. It's not unusual for creative developers to put the living areas upstairs if that's where the best light and the best views are. It might feel topsy-turvy to put the bedrooms in the lower ground floors of a property, but sometimes it actually makes perfect sense. They're cooler, quieter, and more private. If that means flipping the layout of the house, then don't be afraid to break from convention. As it stands, it's also a huge hike up 3 flights of stairs from the kitchen to the master bedroom. Hardly ideal when it comes to making your early morning cup of tea.
The kitchen is staying in the basement.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not moving.
Definitely.
Yeah, staying there. The plans have been made, drawn, designed. It's ready to go.
Right, so battle lost and over.
Absolutely.
Peter and Daryl are sticking to their guns and get straight to work knocking through their brand new subterranean living area. In Strood, Vernon's been working on the hull for a whole 6 weeks. This huge task is taking up every moment of his time, and he still hasn't got around to drawing up a design for the houseboat. It's causing Sue big problems. Sue's trying to find a mooring, but with little idea what the boat will look like, no mariner will even talk to her.
I know that you're pushed for time. I know you've got ideas, but we need to get those onto paper.
If I stop and do those, then I'm not getting the hull done. Next thing, we'll be working against the weather and we'll be further behind than we are now.
How long will the hull take you?
1 to 2 weeks-ish.
Vernon doesn't want to work on the design until he's finished the hull. Unfortunately, though, he doesn't seem to have much idea of how long that will actually take. So how much has this held up the schedule?
I don't really work it out exactly, but quite a few weeks, really.
So do you have a schedule?
I've half given up with it now.
I think you have to have a schedule, and you have to... I mean, you've got to have an idea of how much you're planning on spending, how long it's planning on taking, because otherwise it's likely to evolve into no profit.
No, it's not going to do that.
Isn't it?
No.
The success of Sue and Vernon's new venture is looking decidedly shaky. In North Greenwich, super-confident Peter and Daryl are 10 weeks into their development of their Victorian terrace. The basement has been completely opened up and upstairs has already been replumbed, rewired and replastered. But even though Daryl took a part-time job so he could project manage, he's not on site as often as would be ideal, and that, in my experience, can lead to problems.
So this RSJ here is basically going to sit the width of the floor here, which is going to support the loft conversion.
Yeah, and it's not in.
So why has all this work been done then? Why have they plastered? Why have they...
Well, I don't know.
Why haven't they picked this up?
The supporting steel that should have gone in hasn't. Really, this should have been spotted much earlier. Now Peter has to try to sort it out with the main contractor.
So what concerns me is why this wasn't put in prior to, you know, having all this done.
It was our mistake, but, I mean, they done straight away the straight ceiling in this room when you ask them, so that's why it's happened.
They can't agree a solution with the builders, and Peter's starting to lose his perspective on this development.
It's at the point where we're actually thinking, well, shall we bother with the loft conversion?
This would be a huge mistake. I can understand that their confidence has taken a knock, but throwing in the towel is not the right option. I have been in your position where you're halfway through a job, it's all going wrong, and you just think, let's just cut the losses and run. The right thing to do is to stick with it. You have to do that loft conversion, because otherwise you really are in trouble when you come to sell that house. Yeah. There is one way they can make their lives an awful lot easier, but I'm not sure they're going to like my suggestion. I mean, the reality is, Daryl, you do have Thursdays and Fridays off, and you could be on site all day for 2 of the 5 days of the week. Mm-hmm. You're not, are you?
I can't see over them all the time, literally watching over their shoulders.
Clearly the project management isn't working. It's your money on the line, mm-hmm. So there's only 2 people who need to step in, and that's not me. If they want to protect their profit margin, Peter and Daryl need to start taking a much more hands-on approach to this development. That's certainly something that Vernon Francis knows all about. He's finally finished replacing the hull of his houseboat, which is a bit like re-roofing a house single-handedly. It's been a fantastic solo effort, but it's ended up taking 12 long weeks.
When I took this project on, people said everything takes longer on water. I thought that was a load of nonsense. It does.
And that's landed Sue and Vernon right in the soup, because just when this project should be finishing, the real work is only just about to begin. In Strood, 4 months into their development, Vernon and Sue Francis's luxury houseboat should be finished and on the market. Vernon won't earn a penny until they sell, and work on the lower deck is only just beginning. He's finally decided upon a spacious 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom layout down here, but there's still one huge problem that never seems to go away.
Well, the lower deck plans aren't drawn yet, but I know where that is going to be and how it's going to work. And the upper deck, I quite probably won't do any plans for the upper deck.
The truth is, Vernon can't do the plans because he still hasn't decided on the design. No drawings mean no mooring, and no mooring means little or no profit. I'm determined to make Vernon pin down a design once and for all. So I'm taking him to this houseboat moored near Chelsea in London. This is a prime piece of real estate. The boat is valued at £500,000, and whilst empty moorings here are practically unheard of, it's got just the kind of top-end design and specification that could get Sue and Vernon into a top-end mooring elsewhere. The right solution is a mixture between what you need inside and what it looks like outside. Now, you definitely want an outside space. I think that's really essential.
Yeah.
This boat, for instance, is about 2/3 covered, and then this open area at the back. And it's actually incredibly simple in its design, and it's lovely because of that. Vernon could do far worse than to copy this boat's layout inch for inch. On the lower deck, there are 2 large double bedrooms and an amazingly spacious bathroom. But it's the upper deck that really makes this houseboat quite special. Now, what do you reckon?
Very impressive.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It is.
I think in terms of the space, up here you've got your kitchen, which is a good-sized kitchen. You've got the dining area and the sitting area, and then you've got the outside space, and I think that's what you need to achieve for it to be a great houseboat. So the next job has to be that you get some drawings done of the outside of how it's going to look, so that Sue can work on getting you a mooring.
Yeah. Time is marching on.
Will you do some drawings?
Yes, I'll do some drawings. Thanks for nagging me. No, I will.
My nagging does pay off, and a week later, Sue finally has the plans she needs to start finding a mooring. But even with plans, this was never going to be easy.
Hello, I'm looking for a residential mooring. Hello, can you tell me have you got any residential moorings? You don't. OK, thank you very much. OK, hello. Right, thank you very much for your help. Bye-bye. Thanks, bye-bye. It's been quite difficult trying to find a mooring. Firstly, because the boat is so long. It's an 80-foot boat, and secondly, because there aren't the residential moorings available that we thought that there would be.
Only now, 5 months too late, are Sue and Vernon beginning to understand that they've risked a great deal on one very precarious development. In North Greenwich, Peter and Darryl have decided to go ahead with the loft conversion. But to keep the schedule on track, they've agreed with the builders to have the supporting steel projecting above the floor of the loft, rather than disturb the newly plastered ceiling below. It's cutting a huge corner, because now they've lost a precious 10 centimetres of head height in an area where head height is at a premium.
OK, so how much head height are we actually going to get now?
In theory now, 230.
230 instead of, we could have got 240.
240.
They're now going to have to work even harder to make their loft feel light and spacious. So I'm taking Peter and Darryl to this house in Balham, South London, for a quick lesson in loft design. The one thing that's so successful in here is the light, and this is the most wonderful door.
My only concern is that you're losing a wall to put a unit on, and there's not many walls in that loft that you can actually put a wardrobe and, say, a chest of drawers.
Actually, you're better off putting the wardrobes into the eaves and using the flat walls to let the light in, because look, over here, you've got brilliant wardrobes. But there's loads and loads of storage. I think you should have built-in cupboards, especially when you've got eaves.
The main reason I've brought the boys here is to show them how you can get a proper bathroom into even the tightest of spaces.
I'm not sure about the bath. I think it's really awful. I think, like, really try to cram it in when actually you could have just left that as floor space.
If you don't make the very best of the bathroom up on the top floor, it's just a spare guest suite, and you really want it to be able to be the master suite, because let's be honest, if you're up on the top floor, you've got to walk down nearly as far as the kitchen if you do want to have a bath.
For the very first time since this development began, Peter and Darryl take my advice. And how? In a daring design move, they not only install a bathroom, they make the whole loft completely open plan. It's a bold statement that could be just right for their up-and-coming area.
That loft was quite inspirational, and, you know, we really have listened to what Sarah was saying, you know, making sure that there was a decent, you know, ensuite area and there was plenty of light, and we came back with a lot of good ideas.
The development is back on track and nearing completion. But this house hasn't given Peter and Darryl an easy ride, and it's not finished with them yet. With the end nearly in sight, disaster strikes. A leaking water pipe in the newly converted loft causes a massive flood, damaging every room on every floor of this development.
Pretty soul-destroying, really. I just feel like it's been months of hard work for absolutely no reason. Can we stop that?
It's a complete heartbreaker for the boys. Now they're going to have to dig very deep indeed to get the development back on track. In Strood, Vernon's houseboat is finally starting to make some real progress. The upper deck has been assembled, and then the whole structure is craned into position.
Hold on. Right, go on.
Vernon might be 6 months over schedule and £20,000 over budget, but this is still a seriously impressive solo achievement.
It's just got to succeed, and I won't back down, no matter what. And the fact that so many people have said I won't be able to do it, that just makes me even more determined to do it.
But without a mooring, this houseboat is a sinking ship, and Sue and Vernon still haven't found one. The stress is beginning to tell.
I'm running a business. My husband's not been earning for almost a year while he's working on this project, and now I'm finding it very difficult to find the time to look, but when I have spent several hours looking, there hasn't been anything. I looked around Hertfordshire, I looked at Essex, I looked through Kent. London wasn't at the top of the agenda because I thought it was out of our reach.
A prime London mooring won't be cheap, but it could reap them a decent profit and help them pay back their crippling debts. Sometimes people need a little helping hand. Though they are difficult to find, there are moorings available if you search hard enough. I've come up with this brand new marina in Wandsworth, which is just down the river from exclusive Chelsea Harbour.
The great advantage with this particular mooring is that it also happens to be stuck on the end of a luxury development. This potentially is where somebody who is prepared to pay top whack for a boat is going to be prepared to live.
I'm just blown away. This is fantastic. I don't think we could have got a better location than this. Thank you. This is brilliant. What is it going to cost?
The developers are doing 1-year deals at the moment for £9,000, which gives you enough window to be able to market and sell your boat.
I just can't believe it. I think it's a fantastic place.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't want a better location.
If you sold your boat on this mooring, you would be likely to get around £100,000 profit.
That'd be fantastic.
A phenomenal profit.
Yeah.
The key with this deal is that the boat will have to look exactly right to get into the marina. Then a potential buyer will have the opportunity to purchase a long-term lease, which boosts the houseboat's value.
How are you going to find the £9,000?
I don't know yet,
Remortgage,
but we will.
Probably.
You'll find it.
We'll find it, yeah.
I hope they do, because now they could make a killing out of this development. In North Greenwich, the extensive flood damage to Peter and Daryl's development means a huge repair job. They're forced to borrow another £10,000 to cover the costs, but the boys tough it out. And 10 weeks later, the development is finally finished. Even though it's not the layout I'd have chosen, it's still a highly polished family home. Inside, soft tones and clean contemporary furniture give the whole property a stylish feel. The slick finish is more evident than ever in the lower ground floor. Peter and Daryl have worked hard to brighten this new heart of the home, but there's no disguising the steep hike to the garden, and in my book, that's never going to be right for a family home. It's a sort of poor man's version of having the living space upstairs, isn't it?
How dare you? Go. Poor man's.
I mean, I think what you have to understand is that when you develop, you need to have vision. And you
That's
have vision.
our phrase. That's our phrase.
We are really, really pleased with the way it's turned out.
Really, really pleased with it. And a lot of other people are really pleased with it.
I accept we'll never see eye to eye about what they've done in the basement, but their loft conversion is a real triumph. It's got great light, great storage, and a stunning open-plan bathroom. This is fantastic up here, isn't it? Great. But it was hell to get to this point, wasn't it? Do you think that you now, in hindsight, were on site enough?
I think we did as much as we possibly could within our time.
But it wasn't enough, ultimately.
It wasn't enough, no. But I don't think, when will it ever be enough?
I think developing is a full-time job because you do need to be there all the time, especially if you're going to project manage. Tighter project management could have avoided a series of setbacks that helped push the boys' budget over by £40,000. Fortunately for them, the only thing that has been rising faster than their budget is the rocketing local market. Now, you've owned this for 18 months, and if you put it on the market now, unmodernised, you'd be able to sell it for £400,000, which means that you've made £120,000, regardless of whatever work you've done. If the boys sold for the original £440,000 they were hoping for, they'd walk away with just £40,000 profit. Just how much this property is likely to now be worth is down to the agent's valuations.
It's a lovely loft conversion, lovely light, plenty of windows.
If you actually had a terrace or balcony area coming up to the flat area of the garden, that would really use the space far more sensibly.
Basements can be problematic as they don't get too much light, but I think they've done the best they could here. I would value this property at £550,000.
I would value this house at £575,000.
Now, we've had two valuations. One's come in at £550,000 and one's come in at £575,000.
That's really pleasing.
Now, if you sell for the lowest figure, you'd make £150,000 profit, and if you sell for the highest figure, you'd make £175,000 profit from this.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
It's way over whatever we dreamed to make on this place. But at the end of the day, I think we deserved it, so hats off to Peter and Daryl.
Peter and Daryl chose their location well and are riding an amazing local market. In a bullish mood, they decide to ignore the agent's valuations and put the house on the market for £650,000. Within a fortnight, they receive an offer at our highest valuation of £575,000. But confident as ever, Peter and Daryl decide to hold out for a higher price. In Strood, Vernon and Sue aren't nearly as upbeat about their finances. They're struggling to raise the £9,000 for that all-important central London mooring, and they don't seem to have any control of their finances at all.
To be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you how much over I am at the moment. I don't really look.
Months ago, Vernon and Sue Francis bought this tin pot barge with the hope of transforming it into a luxury houseboat. I never thought I'd say it, but it's finally finished. Sue and Vernon have ended up with a handsomely proportioned houseboat that won't look out of place in its new mooring. And that's right where they're heading. They've raised the cash they needed, and today their houseboat has completed her maiden voyage to her new upmarket London location.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Hello.
God, look at it. Fantastic. A year later, it's finished.
Finally.
Finally,
Isn't she
yes.
lovely?
Does
What's she
look
called?
nice. Taylor.
After a daughter.
Oh, so it's named after you, this great big boat.
Vernon put his heart and soul into the boat, and what an achievement it is. The layout upstairs works really well. There's the all-important outside space to the rear that gives way to a wonderfully spacious kitchen diner. Overall, the styling is modern, and the oak flooring fits in well. In fact, this development feels more like a trendy apartment than a traditional boat.
Isn't this great? Look at the views of London. What a great space. Isn't this fantastic? The only thing I was going to say is that in a perfect world, it would have granite worktops and a wooden kitchen. Did you make a decision to not do that for any particular reason? Or?
The amount of money we've spent is far greater than we anticipated, so unfortunately...
Had to cut back on things.
Yes.
Money was always going to be tight, but downstairs Sue and Vernon have made their limited budget go a very long way. Going with the 2 double-bedroom layout means there's ample space for a well-fitted bathroom. Next door, there's a huge living area that's bigger than most you'd expect to see on the shore.
I'm very pleased with it. It is a big transformation. Yeah.
You've done lots and lots of long hours, haven't you? 75, 85-hour weeks.
God, that's
We've not seen a lot of Daddy, have we?
He came home really, really late when I was in bed, and then he went really early in the morning before I woke up.
Did you miss him much?
Yeah.
It was the lack of money on this project that put such a strain on Vernon. So did his gargantuan solo effort pay off?
Now, you were going to spend £37,500 refurbishing the whole boat. How much did you end up spending?
£61,500.
That's massively different.
Mm-hmm.
Despite Vernon's hard work, the budget still rocketed. Labour and materials came in well over at £31,100. He did manage to keep his kitchen and bathroom budget of £3,000, but really that's not enough to be spending on a top-end development. Furnishing and decoration almost doubled, coming in at £9,700. But he did make a saving on the professional fees and costs, which came in under budget at £4,400. Mooring fees ended up costing £13,300, meaning the final budget rose from £40,000 to a more realistic £61,500. Add that to the original cost of the boat, and the spend for the whole development is £74,000.
£74,000 is still not very much money for a really spacious 2-bedroom house, which is effectively what you've got. And the mooring here could cost anywhere up to £275,000. So add those two together and you're in at £349,000, and that's the cost of it.
The permanent mooring has to be bought separately off the marina, and its price could vary, but at today's value, a buyer would have to pay a combined price of £430,000 for the mooring and the boat to make Sue and Vernon's £80,000 profit. So what do the agents make of it?
I really love the way they've maximised the glass in here. We
ceiling height's fantastic. You get a real feeling of space.
This is a wonderful space, isn't it? Really good. And it's great that you can see they've used a proper solid wooden floor, which is good.
Oh, this is really nice. You don't feel as if you're on a boat at all.
I would have hoped to see maybe a slightly sort of higher specification of kitchen units to go with everything else that's here.
I would value this boat on a 60-year residential mooring here at £450,000.
I would value this boat on a mooring in this location at £460,000.
We would value this houseboat at around £460,000.
We have had 3 agents round to value it, and they valued it at £450, £460 and £460. So if you sold it at £450, the lower figure, that would make you £101,000, and the higher figure of £460 would make you £111,000 profit. How would you feel with £100,000 in your pocket?
I haven't really thought like that. I'm not even sitting here thinking I want a new car or anything. I just want to get to the
But that wasn't the plan, was it?
hurdle.
The plan was another boat.
Yes.
So the plan already is, and he's already found another boat to do.
I can see why, because the figures look good. Sue and Vernon spent £74,000 on the houseboat, and the cost of the mooring would hike that up to £349,000. So if they sold for the upper valuation of £460,000, they'd make a tremendous £111,000 profit. But first, of course, they need to find a buyer.
That's great. Wouldn't it be wonderful waking up here every morning? It's so light.
Funky room.
Ooh, love the roll.
And nice to have a separate shower, hey? That's unusual. You don't often get that in London, let alone on a boat.
Feels much, much more like an apartment. Upstairs it felt much more like a boat.
The positive feedback suggests this could be the start of a great houseboat developing career for Vernon. So this is the beginning of a boat-building empire, then, is it?
Well, it'd be nice to have an empire, but yeah, maybe a boat-building career, yes, certainly.
Boats is the way forward for us, isn't it, to make money?
Yeah.
It should be plain sailing. Both Sue and Vernon and Pete and Darrell in Greenwich show that a location can make or break a development. Pete and Darrell didn't get their property spot on, but they should do really well from a rocketing local market. As for Sue and Vernon, bringing their houseboat to central London should make the development an out-and-out success.